Welcome into episode 462 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue, Scott McLaughlin. We're also joined by Harold. I'm going to shout him out real quick. Bridget, do your thing. There he is. There's Harry the giraffe, Bridget's new best friend.
Are you fully committed to Harold? Because I saw on Twitter some people had other ideas for names.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're still accepting candidates or if he's just Harold for good.
I'm open to ideas. I'm open to ideas. It hasn't quite, fully stuck yet, but Harold is definitely the first name that came to mind. And I'm a Harry Styles fan, so that's where Harold came from. But I am open to other ideas.
I saw Gerard, which works as both like Gerard the giraffe, like good alliteration, and also the actor Gerard Butler, like kind of plays off that.
That he's a butler, yeah.
I just like the one name persona that he has, just kind of like Madonna, just Harold. It's great.
Harold, yeah. And I think someone else said Jerry, like as in Jerry Cheevers. So like, trying to bring some Bruins names into it as well.
Yeah, which can also play off Gerard. But then you're like, how many names does he have? Is he Gerard? Is he Jerry? Is he Gerard the giraffe? Is he just like...
Is he Gerard Butler?
Yeah. kind of with Brian, like Harold, it's like people all over the world know who Harold is.
Know Harold is, yeah. And it's one of those things where you see him and you just kind of like, what his name is somehow. So I saw him and I was like, Harold, what's up? And that's how it happened. So
that's the name. That's the name. You can call it a working title, but I think that's his name. Anyway, Bridget and Scott, we recently saw that the Bruins released their 2025-2026 schedule, and I want to throw it away to Bridget here.
All right. So, yeah, I mentioned on our last podcast it was coming out Wednesday. That was yesterday as of the time we were recording. So now we've had about 24 hours to digest what the new schedule for next season is going to look like. I don't know about you guys. I had to go through and change my whole calendar and throw everything in, and now hockey season I'm already starting to get stressed out about because my calendar is absolutely full and I'm like, I don't even know when I'm going to have time to like eat. But anyway, I'm also excited about it. And I know we wanted to highlight some key dates. So Scott, I know you wanted to talk about one in particular. We'll start with that.
Well, yeah, I think like right away, the first one that stood out to me is Brad Marchand's return because it's early on. It's the 8th game of the season. Tuesday, October 21st, Florida Panthers come into town. Obviously, we know, Marchand, that the Bruins did play the Panthers after the trade in March. Actually, like right after. Marchand was there, but
I saw him.
He was in the building, but he did not. He almost got run over by Bridget. But he was not on the jumbotron. He was not out in like the public eye. He obviously did not play. He was still injured. So this, assuming health, will be his return, and we can expect the full tribute. Like I was on Evan Marinofsky's podcast yesterday, and I was like, I wonder if it's even more than just the video at the first break, standing ovation from the crowd. He comes out, skates a lap. Like, I wonder if there's even something pregame, or do you wait till he actually gets like the end of his career for kind of the bigger ceremony? But either way, I think that's going to be an emotional night. It's going to be a long and loud standing ovation. I saw NHL Network like posted a video on Twitter with like a question of like, what kind of reception will Marchand get? And I was like, that's just like total clickbait, rage bait. Like, if you haven't even listened to the video clip, like everyone on the desk was like, oh yeah, he's going to get cheered. And it's like, yeah, duh. Like, of course, there's not going to be booing. So I'm looking forward to that. Like, I think that's going to be, most importantly, like it's going to be a chance for fans to actually give Marchand a proper goodbye, which they didn't get to do. He was injured at the time of the trade. He wasn't back. He didn't get a moment with fans. So there's lots of games to circle, and we'll get to more of them, but that was number one for me.
Yeah, October 21st. So happening pretty early on in the season. The season opener.
It's also, by the way, it's also the only time the Panthers come here this season. It's their only trip to Boston.
I mean, that's just bad for Bruins fans, because that's one of the the better games that I know people talk about wanting to get tickets to for obvious reasons. So the more times they can play Florida, I guess, at TD Garden, the better for people around here. But at the same time, we know how those games have turned out. So the season starts against Washington on the road on October 8th. And then I believe October 9th, the next day, is their home opener against Chicago. So early October is when the regular season starts. I just want to highlight a few other homecomings because obviously there was a lot of trades made at last year's trade deadline. So Brendan Carlo and Toronto will come back to Boston November 11th. If you guys are Carlo fans, you want to go see him again. December 4th, Jim Montgomery will be back. Charlie Coyle will be back February 26th. And then there's 4 Western road trips that are kind of sprinkled throughout. I think there's a pretty long one in December, if I'm not wrong. And then the Stadium Series game against Tampa, February 1st. I don't know if anyone is planning on going down to that, traveling down to Florida to watch a outdoor hockey game in Florida. I'm just intrigued, and I know that the technology is way better now, but there's been Winter Classics that were in cold environments where the ice was crap. And this game is going to be it played, and what I can only assume is like 70-degree weather, like not hockey conditions, I'll put it that way. So I'm interested in that. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go. Scott, are you planning on going?
I am. I'm looking forward to that, actually. It's very convenient timing where they have that outdoor game in Tampa February 1st. Then they play at Florida in Sunrise February 4th. And then they're on the Olympic break. So I'm looking at that as maybe some extended Florida time for me. Take a little vacation. So
sounds dangerous.
Yeah, you know me. I'm gonna just be partying it up on South Beach after that Panthers game. So
oh, God. You're gonna go to the what's that bar that they go to? The
Elbow Room.
Elbow Room.
Yeah, Elbow Room.
That's gonna be there though. They're gonna have to drag him out. You need me to go so I can drag you out like they dragged Marchand out.
As far as warm weather, climate, outdoor games, the NHL does have a few examples, I think. I mean, Dallas and Nashville would be one. I don't know. I don't think Dallas obviously gets, certainly in the winter months, it's not as bad as Florida, but that's an example. I think Carolina hosted a game recently too, a Stadium Series. Are there any others?
Even the Bruins game at Fenway was high 50s.
That's true. Yeah, that was an abnormal day.
Freezing. And it was fine after, talking to some of the players, they didn't really have any issues with the ice. So
yeah, and I'm assuming this is going to be a night game. I know they haven't announced the time yet, but I'd imagine it has to be. It's not going to be a day game in Florida. And I remember reading something last year when they announced the game that there's going to be like some sort of like, I don't know, like tent over the ice like all day leading up to the game. So essentially, like, sun's going to be blocked out from hitting the ice. So I'm sure they have something. The Winter Classic is also in Florida this year. That the Panthers are hosting that against the Rangers, but that is at the Miami Marlins Stadium, Lone Depot Park, which has a retractable roof, so they can actually climate control that a little more leading up to it.
And I will say that is a Sunday, so February 1st is a Sunday. So I guess like theoretically you could go down there for just the weekend, or you could stay. Like Scott's never coming back, but yeah, for me, unfortunately, I have a broadcast on Saturday, so I just don't think unless I traveled in like day of, I don't think I could do it. So, which is a bummer because I really wanted to. But anyway, Scott seems like he'll be there. We'll have boots on the ground. Any games, Brian, that stuck out to you before we get to your opening shifts?
Yeah, there's a couple for me. I would say, every year it's fun to see the first game against the original 6 teams. So obviously, they do see Chicago early on. You get Toronto in November. You have the Rangers the day after Thanksgiving, the Black Friday game. Connor McDavid comes to Boston on December 18th. Montreal in Boston is December 23rd. So a nice little pre-Christmas Bruins Canadiens game is always fun.
Wait, and the Bruins at Canadiens game is March 17th.
Well,
So
there's two. November 15th is the first
November
one.
15th, which I cannot do, but March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day.
Ooh.
Scott, we going?
Possibly. I think I'm definitely doing the November game. I think March I was gonna have to figure out at a later date.
Well, I am the maid of honor in a wedding on that day, so I will not be there. But March.
Two other quick games I just want to mention on the schedule as well that caught my eye. The first one is the last game of the season, which is at home against the Devils, and I bring that up because what are the final game implications with that game? We saw last year that there were some implications. It affected if the Bruins, where they finished in the final standings and their draft lottery chances, and we all know how that played out. Utah and the Islanders of all teams moved up, and the Bruins went down 2 spots, and we know the rest with James Hagens. But is that a game where we're talking about lottery positioning, or is that a game where we're talking about playoff positioning? Right. So I'm curious to see where the Bruins are at that point. And the last game I want to mention, guys, and it is what date is it? Saturday, March 7th, 12:30 at the Garden against the Washington Capitals. Is that Alex Ovechkin's last game at TD Garden? Is he retiring after the season? I'm not so sure that he is, but right now it's a question mark, and so I just circled that game as well. If there's any chance that it's Ovechkin's last season, then that would be your last chance to see him play in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Last thing I just wanted to highlight specifically about the start of the schedule is they have 3 back-to-backs in October alone. Usually you don't really see the back-to-backs start to pile up until the second half, like until after NFL season, because then you get a lot of the Saturday, Sunday back-to-backs. But yeah, they have as Bridget mentioned, your first 2 games at Washington and then home opening in Chicago the very next night. So then they have 3 home games. Then they go on the road to Vegas, Colorado, and Utah, and the Colorado and Utah games are a back-to-back. And then when they come home, like the last week of October, they have an at Ottawa and then home against the Islanders on Monday, Tuesday, back-to-back. So a really busy start to the season. You know, definitely some tough matchups in there. 7 of their 13 games in October are against teams that made the playoffs last year, which is a slightly easier start than last year. Last year they faced a lot of playoff teams in October. I think it was 8 of 11. I went back and looked. But just a busy one. Like there's no that they've had some years where they've kind of like seemingly eased into the schedule where they have like 2 days off between games. This is not going to be that kind of year. They're going to get thrown right in. And I think we'll learn some things about this early team through that Tampa, Vegas, Colorado, Utah, Florida stretch of 5 games, like basically the second 2 weeks of the season. You're going to learn some things about how competitive this team can be and how they stack up against some of the better teams in the league.
Now, hopefully they stack up a little bit better than my dream last night. I didn't say this to you guys before we started recording, but I had a dream last night, and there's a few elements of it that really tips you off that it was unrealistic in ways. But I had a dream about
Was there a golden giraffe butler?
There was no Harold. No,
because that would actually be real life.
There was no Harold. But what I dreamt about was the Bruins season opener, and as we know, they're playing the Capitals on the road. But this season opener was against the Panthers, and it was one of those situations where I wasn't watching it from start to finish. I kind of entered the arena like midway through the game, and I looked at the scoreboard. It was 19-1 Panthers in the second period. This is God's honest truth. And Charlie McAvoy was out for the season. So, but not only that, he was also on the bench coaching the Florida. He was an assistant coach of the Florida Panthers. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, what is going on? How do you give up 19 goals halfway through the second period? And why is McAvoy assistant coaching the Panthers? Clearly, just like the subconsciousness of all the rhetoric about playing Marchand next year, just like that kind of entered my mind. A former Bruin with the Panthers, and the Bruins opened against the Panthers the previous year. So I don't know why that was the case last night, but hopefully they do better than that against the Capitals on opening night.
Well, we'll mark it down for in case like a few years from now, because Marchand's contract is 6 years. Who knows? Maybe this is a premonition for 3 years from now, Brian, and everyone's gonna really be mad about that if it's true. But
I think we might need like a skate pod dream segment, like make up a banner for that, like fashion segment. Because listen, I have very boring dreams. I usually don't even remember them, but you two have like some truly bizarre dreams regarding the Bruins.
Yeah,
most of them I don't even share with you guys. So,
I mean, this one was like 4 hours ago, probably, because don't they say your dreams take place in the last 30 seconds before you wake up, or something like that, or last, I don't know, minute before you wake up? So it was probably only four hours ago. So it was just fresh in my mind. But yeah, hopefully they don't go down 19-1. I think it was just a combination of everybody saying this offseason, oh, the Bruins are terrible, don't even watch them, and all these just storylines about Marchand, and it all just kind of blended together with the schedule coming out yesterday, apparently. Anyway, all right. So I'll get to my opening shift quickly, which is I asked Bruins fans what their preferred development path would be for James Hagens next year. The options were go back to Boston College or turn professional. Now, when I say turn professional, I know it's easy to assume that means the NHL, but it also means the American Hockey League. And when I think about this question, that's where my mind goes to when it comes to development, because the one main pro, no pun intended, about going to the AHL versus BC is the schedule. I mean, the American Hockey League has a unique schedule in and of itself where they play a lot of games on weekends, but they play a 72 game schedule, which is much closer to that of the NHL schedule than 35 to 40 games in college hockey. But aside from that, my mind is where your guys' mind is, which is go back to school. And again, you play in the AHL, you play a larger schedule. You're getting acclimated to the pro game without being overexposed by NHL talent. I do see why that could be good for his development, outside of BC. But I like BC. And that's what fans voted. Fans voted 86.5% return to Boston College, 13.5% voted to turn pro. Whether in their mind that's the AHL, the NHL, I don't know what that 13.5% represented. But in any event, Bruins fans, they know what they think is best for Hagens' development. I wonder if the Bruins feel the same way. I think the three of us might think that they do.
I was going to ask you guys if you voted in Brian's poll.
I did, yeah.
I did too.
So, I've been saying all along, I think another year at BC would be best for him. I think the Bruins agree. And I think that I do think that's what's going to happen. I said that last episode and talked to someone after that episode who would know kind of about where this is going. And, not really like a hard report here, but I came away from that conversation thinking like 99% he's going back to BC. And at this point, I would be very surprised if anything else happens.
Yeah, I also had reached out to the people I knew there. And so oddly enough, for whatever reason, I don't know if maybe people were trying to like just throw me off the scent or didn't want to deal with me, but I had gotten mixed answers early in the week from people I was talking to there. But I think that the one that was like, yeah, I don't know, was just didn't care to have a conversation about it, maybe. So,
well, I think there's also people who want Hagens to be able to announce it himself and don't want to spoil it or be the one to leak it out. But, yeah, I mean, I guess what I would definitely say is I haven't heard anyone tell me or indicate that there's a real chance of him turning pro now.
No, and I feel like that the fact that there's no one outright coming out and saying anything, I think people would have leaked already if they had heard conversations where leaning that direction, because that would be the shocking direction. So, I mean, if somebody that I knew had heard that, oh, there's a chance he's not coming, I bet I wouldn't have even had to reach out. I probably would have gotten a text and that said, hey, guess what? Hagens might be starting in Boston, but that's not happened.
So I'm personally, I cannot wait to see NCAA Division I hockey next year across the country. I cannot wait for it. And I just think that, selfishly speaking, through that lens, seeing Hagens go back to BC just adds to that, right? And simultaneously, I do think that it's best for his development as well. So it's I know we're a Bruins podcast, but I think it does both things. I think it is better for the Bruins prospect. And I also think it's just going to add to what I think should be among, if not the best, NCAA Division I product league-wide, nationwide, that there ever has been. But with that said, guys, let's take the NHL and just throw it in the trash, because I don't think any of us are talking about that. But can you guys elaborate and maybe compare and contrast what you think the difference in development would be NCAA D1 next year for him versus the American Hockey League? Because I think the American Hockey League, I know it's not the sexy answer, right? But he would get paid more money there than he would any NIL money. And I also just think, like I said earlier, like the schedule, getting used to an NHL caliber schedule as far as amount of games, not necessarily how the schedule is spread across weeks. I think there is an element to that where players come out of NCAA and they aren't. It's a big jump from 35 to 40 games to an 82 game regular season schedule in the NHL. We talked about it with Jeremy Swayman. Obviously, it's a little bit different as a goalie, but just that is something that players have to get used to when they go right from college hockey to the NHL, if that's the case. So when comparing and contrasting development paths for Hagen, NCAA versus American Hockey League, what's your guys' pros and cons with that?
I mean, I generally think college, especially for a teenager, I think college is better. I think it's better to be playing players closer to your own age. College does still, he's going to be 18 turning 19 during the season. He's still facing older, stronger players. So, like, he's still getting that, but you're facing 21, 22, 23-year-olds and not 30-year-olds and not guys just looking for ways to sustain their career who, I mean, quite frankly, like, there's players who would just target Hagens in the AHL to try to make a point, to try to show, how tough they are, what they can do.
And also, just to interject, I know people are probably wondering if that happens in college hockey too. It really doesn't. I mean, of course, you might have a bad actor here or there, but in terms of like safety enforcement, college hockey does it right. I think that they have a better system for player safety in terms of punishment and suspension, and there's no fights, obviously. Sometimes there is, but normally there's not. It's not legal in the rules, but yeah, I think that in terms of safety, like, he's safe. The NCAA path is safer for people.
Yeah, I also think it's like just a better, I'm gonna say, like, life for a kid his age. Like, like, enjoy college. Like, let him be a kid for one last year. I mean,
Gets all his meals cooked.
the HL is a man's league. Like, it's a professional league. You're, like, he's gonna be, like, obviously he'll be surrounded by teammates, but you're living in Providence. You're riding buses to different AHL cities. Like, it's not the same. Like, I just come down on, like, I think it's probably best for his development. I think it probably allows him to thrive, and it probably makes him happiest. Like, if he's like, well, where I really want to be is the NHL with the Bruins. Okay, but if I have to settle for something less than that, like, I would think he's probably going to be happier at BC for a year than the Providence Bruins for a year.
I don't know if either of you guys listened to the interview Trent Frederick did with What Chaos, I think it was last year, about, like, when he started in the AHL when he's living in Providence, and he was having to like get food for himself and like just he only ate McDonald's breakfast sandwiches for the entire time he was there because he didn't cook and he didn't know how to like that's what I'm imagining, like a kid at 18 just going to Providence and being like, well, I don't know what to do. So
I mean let me put it this way. I've talked to lots of players over the years who have said, I wish I spent more time in college. I don't think I've ever talked to one who said, I wish I spent more time in the AHL.
All good points. All good points.
I think we did kind of accidentally not talk about the on ice stuff all that much, though.
well, and that's why I wanted to say, because like I think the off ice stuff, you're absolutely right. I think from Hagen's perspective, he would much rather live a lifestyle with his friends on a college campus playing NCAA hockey. Like it's way more fun, no doubt. I think the flip side is if you're playing in Providence and you're living on your own or with a teammate, like there is that element of just like, okay, but it could help you grow up off the ice a little bit as well. But off ice, there's no question. I think that what you guys are saying is right. The one thing that keeps coming to my mind, and maybe your response is, yeah, I don't really put much weight in that, is the difference in schedule, the 72 game schedule.
I don't put all that much weight into it. No, a lot of these really amazing, like think about the paths of top 10 picks. A lot of them go the college route and forego the AHL unless they absolutely have to, to as the next step to that NHL spot. But I mean, I hate to use like the names of guys who are very obviously amazing talents, but like Macklin Celebrini, Lane Hudson, not really that bothered, and Scott's gonna be like, those are BU people. I think Ryan Leonard will be fine.
So what you're saying is Hagen should transfer to BU is what you're
I saw that BU has the second highest odds of winning a title this year on the men.
Yeah, BU's gonna be really good. It's funny because it's like they don't have any of these like real top guys this year, but what they do have is just like a bunch of really good players. That BU has the most NHL draft picks of any college team. They just don't have like top 5 picks.
Yeah, they got a good goalie too. They got Yegorov again, but I think the only team higher than them was Penn State because they just got Gavin McKenna. That was the highest odds of winning that you could bet on.
Will Smith is another example. If you look close to home, Charlie McAvoy, of course. Matt Grizzlick spent some time in Providence, but McAvoy pretty much skipped Providence. I mean, he for the most part. So yeah, you're right, Bridget. It does happen. Maybe we talked about it more with Swayman because it's probably a much different story for goaltenders.
Oh yeah, for goalies, I think that's where you really have to consider the difference.
Well, and I think once you get to like 20, 21 years old, like it can start to become a different conversation. I just think for an 18 going on 19, I don't love the idea of that player being in the AHL. And I mean, I guess like unless you think like he only needs a couple months, like a David Pastrnak situation, like he only needs a couple months there and then he's ready for the NHL, which like maybe Hagens would be, but I just don't. I organizationally, I would feel zero need to rush him. Like I just think BC's pains me to say it's a BU guy, but like I think it's a great spot for him to be for another year. Like I don't really see the downside that would make me think like, how can we get him out of here? Like, should we get him out of here? Like, no, I think it's a great spot for him to be. So I just wouldn't feel the need to change anything.
Yeah, and he's going to be logging a lot of power play time. He's going to be on PP1. Like Scott mentioned this last episode, maybe he even gets some practice on the PK, which he wasn't really doing last year, but try him out there because that's something that BC likes to do is have their best players do both, play all facets of the game. So maybe he gets a little bit of extra time to learn that. And just the extra experience with all those different facets of the game that he's going, because he's going to be getting a lot of minutes as their best player next year. I mean, that's just what he is. He's their best player this upcoming season as a sophomore because Leonard and Perreault have moved on. Fowler has moved on. We'll see. Maybe he plays in Montreal this year. Who knows? But those were the guys last year, and he's going to be the guy this year, and he should be able to get a lot of reps, even though the schedule-wise it's lighter than what he'd get in the AHL. He's per game reps are going to be pretty high.
Yeah, and I am in complete agreement with where he should start next season. I'm more so playing devil's advocate just to kind of present both sides. But for me, being the guy at BC, like Bridget said,
Is he your roommate now? Now that
who, Jimmy?
now that
No.
Wallstrom's gone, did he move in?
Well,
No.
guys,
By the way, happy birthday, Marat Husnadina.
I was gonna say,
He's having pancakes in the kitchen right now. I'm trying to, but yes, there he is.
Honestly, a total failure for this podcast that it took 29 minutes for us to get to.
I can't believe it.
The most important date of the offseason, quite frankly.
Pretty much. But yes, I think entering next season with all eyes on Hagens, he's very well aware of the narrative that was around him last year. Only a point per game. Like, I think he's going to have a revenge tour. I think he's going to be among the most prominent players in college hockey next year, alongside Gavin McKenna, and there's a few others in the in next year's NHL draft class that
Keaton Veerhoff at North Dakota.
Yep, he'll be playing with Will Zellers, but yeah, and that's who's in my mind as well, Scott. So,
by the way, lots of like whispers, chatter, kind of starting. People who are like, watch out for Veerhoff challenging McKenna for number 1 overall pick. So,
defenseman, for those who don't know who he is. Does Porter Martone end up somewhere, right? So, but I think playing in the Bean Pot, playing in Hockey East playoffs, the NCAA tournament, hopefully a Frozen Four, without the security blanket of Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leddard, as you guys mentioned. Like, I do think that it's what's best for Hagens. And again, what's wrong with him playing his sophomore year with all this experience and then maybe turning pro at the end of his season? It's not the Bruins. The other part of it too, guys, is the Bruins don't need James Hagens right now for what they're trying to accomplish. You don't want an 18-year-old player turned 19 years old to get his first reps on an NHL team that is trying to get their footing and trying to reestablish. Like, they're a work in progress. So I think you're setting him up for failure to put him into a lineup that's trying to find out who they are anyway. So the Bruins are trying to reestablish structure and identity, among other things. They don't need James Hagens to do that. That's kind of just like meat and potatoes of hockey that they can do on their own. So I think that for everybody, I don't think it's helpful for anybody to send them to Providence, to Boston. That's why Providence was my other option.
Yeah, I know. I keep going like this. I go, oh, he's gonna start. I don't think he's gonna start in Boston, and I'm like, I need to be more specific because he is going to start in Boston.
Boston College, not in Boston.
Not Boston. Yeah, I know. Scott's gonna go, oh, it's Chestnut Hill. It's not even Boston. But yeah, if you guys catch me saying like, oh, I don't think he's gonna start in Boston, that means I don't think he's starting with the Bruins.
BC people like to point out to me that the arena is technically in Boston, or like half in Boston. It's like right on the city line. So,
hey, you know what? What I will say, it's a beautiful area.
Is Chestnut Hills like an area of Brookline? It's not a town. It's not a town, right? It's Brookline.
It's an area of Newton, I believe. Technically,
I think it's kind of like a suburb of I don't know. I don't know.
But like also like part of Chestnut Hill is technically in Boston. It's weird. It's its own little thing.
All right.
It's like very, very, very like kind of old looking and rich looking. It's very nice. Every time I drive through there, I'm like, oh, I didn't even know we had this kind of Boston, but it's a nice little corner. But anyway, we've veered.
Let's reset the table here, and let's throw it to Scott. And Scott, why don't you introduce the second part of our podcast today?
So we're gonna do some Bruins superlatives, off-season superlatives, and as I mentioned on the last episode, my best ideas are stolen from the Jones and Keefe show, who, by the way, great ratings in the most recent ratings book. Congrats to them. But they did Red Sox mid-season superlatives at the All-Star break, and so I thought, hey, look, we need content. Like, we're trying to fill some stuff in the off season, so let's come up with some. And we came up with a list of 10 that we'll go through, and we can all throw out ideas, but we're gonna settle on one person to get the superlative from the Skate Podcast. We're going to hold an awards ceremony. I saw the ESPYs were last night. We're also going to get Shane Gillis to host this Bruins Superlatives ceremony.
Wait, we have the perfect guy right here. How are we not using him?
Harold's going to host.
Looks like a trophy. He looks like a big trophy.
What are we going to call it? The Skaties? Is that our award? Is that our trophy?
I have this. It's the
poppies.
That's the positive poo.
Whatever we do, I'd like to do it. Maybe host that at Chili's one of these days. But yeah, it's up to you guys.
The Dundies.
Yeah.
Scott's banned from Chili's for life, though. So
yeah, we don't talk about that.
I thought he was banned from the 99 for stealing all their popcorn.
No, God, oh my God! If I was banned from the 99, I would be in trouble. I don't think I could survive without 99 popcorn.
So yeah, so the three of us will come to an agreement on each one. That's what you're saying, Scott. We'll talk about it.
Yep, or we'll be stuck here all day, and if we can't come to an agreement. So
okay, well, you want to start with the first one?
Sure. So this is directly related to the offseason. Simply, best signing. That could be re-signing. It could be new signing. My pick for me, this would be pretty straightforward. I think Morgan Geekie was the best signing. I like the contract. He's, as it turns out, the best player they signed for sure. But to get that done before free agency, to get it done at a pretty affordable price, lock him up for 6 years. It's not like the Bruins made a ton of great signings, in my opinion, this offseason. So that wound up, to me, being a pretty easy decision, but maybe you guys have other ideas.
Well, I know Brian's answer. There was one RFA from Russia that needed a new contract, and it got done. And now we'll have another 2 years, right? Another 2 years of Kuzi.
Yep. I mean, to be honest, though, he has a spot to win, right? Because as we saw after that, like, they've made a lot of signings, and one of them is a name I'll throw out there as well. For the record, Scott, I agree with your answer for my answer, but Matej Blumel, if that's how you say his first name, I'm very interested to see him because he's 25 years old. He's a little bit older, but he's been a very prominent scorer in the American Hockey League. Now, is he going to be like a Georgi Merkulov that can score at the AHL level, but not the NHL level? Remains to be seen. But I'm curious about him. I think there's a spot to be won there for him as well. And yeah, so I'll throw his name out there because, I mean, Sean Corrali, you know what you're getting. Easymont, you know what you're getting. I honestly, I don't hate the Tanner Jeannot addition as much as others, though those people don't like the contract, not so much the player, which I think is fair too. But Blumel is an interesting one to me. So my answer is Geekie, but Blumel's, I'm interested to see if that could be a low risk, high reward type signing for them.
Yeah, and I will also, I think we can come to a unanimous agreement that the Geekie contract was the biggest thing they did in the offseason besides hire a new head coach. Right, like, I mean, that, and draft Hagens, but
like they re-signed Lohrei too to a good bridge deal. Like I thought that was a fair bridge deal for him too. But I think that if we're talking value, like I think that Lohrei probably got a little bit more than maybe his defensive metrics probably deserved, despite his offensive numbers. So I think the Geekie signing was probably a better value than Lohrei.
Yeah, to be honest. I believe when we mocked up our offseason, we thought he was going to get 6+, and he ends up coming in at 5.5. So that's, the contract is at least slightly under what he could have gotten. So I don't know. I think it's a good. It was a big deal for them to get that done, especially now knowing that free agency played out the way that it did.
Yeah, the Blumel signing is really like a no risk signing. Same with Alex Steves, who also produced at a high rate in the AHL. I will say, because like I see some people like projecting one or both of those guys to make the team, and I think I probably come down on the more skeptical side of this, which is when I see these guys in their mid-20s who score a lot in the AHL, I tend to believe those are good AHL scorers who generally there's a reason they haven't broken through and established themselves in the NHL. So I come down on the side of like, I really need to see it from those guys before I start to get excited. If they have strong camps and play well and in the preseason, like I may start to change my opinion, but I'm definitely more skeptical of those kind of players. Like, just kind of like this is going to be the magic situation where it clicks for them and they start, they establish themselves in the NHL and can produce at that level. Like I think it's more likely they're just really good AHL scorers.
And I can see 4 younger players off the top of my head beating them in camp. Now, I'm not saying all 4 of these players will win spots, but I mean, there's a lot of competition for these, these middle 6 roles. Like you have Patra. Now maybe Patra ends up in the top 6 and Arvidsson goes to the middle 6, but okay, then Arvidsson's there, right? So I mean, Matt Patra, Fraser Minton, Fabian Lysell. I do think a Don Zlochmelis at some point over the next calendar year is going to make a push. And he's a young player that I think is going to do. If he goes to Providence, I think you can expect, not 2 points per game like he had in that brief stint last year, but I think that he should be easily a point per game guy, I think, in the AHL level next year. So he's going to be pushing. Okay, so how does a Lashmelis, a Patra, a Minton, a Lysell, how do those guys stack up against a Blumel or a Steves? Also, there's Georgi Merkulov, who's kind of in the middle of all those players age-wise, but also can produce. So there's just, to Scott's point, it's anything but an automatic. I think that Sweeney just took a flyer on these guys and said, hey, I'm not expecting you guys to make the team, but if you turn heads, then you turn heads. And that's just where my curiosity is, right? I'm just curious to see if these guys can turn heads. I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, and there was a reporting around the time of the Blumel signing that Steve Spott liked him from their time in Dallas. Now, obviously, Blumel was more on Dallas's AHL team, a couple cups of coffee in Dallas. But, that's someone who saw him, who was familiar with him, and clearly gave him, a pretty high recommendation to bring him in and just see what he has.
All right. Worst signing. Do we have any opinions here? I think I might know where this is going. But
yeah,
I'll offer a couple.
For me, like I've talked about it enough, so I won't totally rehash everything. But Tanner Jeannot, I didn't like it from the start. Haven't really come around on it at all. And again, because I know people, conflate these, like not hating Tanner Jeannot, the player or the person. I just hate the contract. So that would be the choice for me.
I'll echo it, Scott. I like I said, I like what he's going to bring to the team next year, and hopefully, time will look good on his contract. But if we're talking the term, I understand the nature of free agency, and that if the Bruins really wanted him and 10 other teams wanted him, then they had to do what they had to do. That said, it's tough to really defend the term, right? If we're talking about worst signing, if we're talking about what the player's done to this point and the length of his contract that they've committed to, it's kind of objective. Like it is probably the worst signing. For that reason, I'll agree.
Like maybe like wording it as worst contract would maybe make it more.
I think that's fair. That's a fair way to put it. Yeah. That's a fair way to put it.
I mean, the other one you could throw out here, because I'm sure someone listening is thinking of this, not a player, but the Bruins did sign Don Sweeney to a 2-year extension. Now, that would not be my choice, because I understand why that happened, and it came in the middle of a coaching search, which is, it's hard to execute a coaching search if you're going into the final year of your contract. But we're throwing out there because I'm sure someone listening is yelling that at their phone or computer or wherever they're listening.
Angrily typing it into the comment section. The hard part about this question is that the you don't really know what you have with a few of the signings. Like a lot of them are the below $1 million signings, right? Like Blumel, Steves, Harris. Those are all
or short
yeah.
term, like Arvidsson, who was a trade, right? But you assumed his contract, but it's a year. Or Corrali is like 2 years. Like they're shorter term deals. So
yeah, that's why like I don't really think any of those can be the answer, because it's like those are all small contracts. Like they're not hindering you in any way. Like you can waive those players, you can send them to Providence, you can bury their money. Like it's hard to really call a short-term low money contract a bad signing.
All right, so do we have an answer for that one then?
I think it's Janelle.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll just put that in our doc here.
It should know, but I am optimistic that he will be a player that fans enjoy next year for some of his intangibles, and hopefully he brings more offensive upside than we've been giving it credit. Sometimes a change of scenery does do a player wonders. Like I mean, I can very much see opening night in Boston against the Blackhawks where Tanner Jeannot wins the crowd over because he drops the gloves right away. And I know that that's cliche and people are expecting that, but it's tough in the moment to not enjoy that. And when you see somebody literally fighting for the team that you root for, people do respect that. So, but yes, the contract is long and it is what it is. It's the seems to be the answer here. Next question, Scott and Bridget. Most to prove.
Most to prove, yeah. So
this for me, was the question I came up with the other day.
Yeah, for me, like the very first one that comes to mind, and may very well be the answer, would be Jeremy Swayman, who needs to bounce back and needs to show he deserves the contract he signed last year. A couple other options I came up with on the player front: Elias Lindholm in year 2 of this contract certainly has a lot to prove. Casey Middlestad, I think, has a lot to prove coming off a down year that he's been traded twice in the last 2 years. And then also Marco Sturm as a first-time NHL head coach. I don't really think I could pick him as my answer, but he definitely has something to prove, just that he can be a good NHL head coach.
Those are the main names I came up with as well. And Bridget, I'm curious to see if you have any additional ones. I feel like the names you said, Scott, will be among the finalists we come down to here. One name that I wanted to bring up as well, and it's not going to be my answer overall, and it's not going to be your guys' answer, but I do want to highlight this player because I think that they have something to prove. And I think they're fortunate to have even been re-signed, and that's Johnny Beecher. Now, I know that he allegedly had a hand injury or a wrist injury last year he was playing through, or I thought I saw something like that, or maybe it was something else.
I mean, you saw it in the story I posted about him, because I talked to him one-on-one during development camp, and he told me that.
Sorry, Scott, but yes, that was Scott's article. So, yeah, that is a player that, in my opinion, has something to prove. Certainly to the team if he wants to stick around in Boston for a long time. I don't think he's not my answer. He's not the fans' answer. He's a fourth liner at best, right? But I think he has something to prove as well. Bridget, do you have any additional names than what Scott offered?
Yeah, I have one, and so my mind went to guys that they added at the trade deadline. I for some reason, like, and besides the obvious Swayman answer, my brain went to Casey Middlestad, and it went to Henry Jokiharju, because those two guys came in, and I think they have a higher ceiling than what their first months with the Bruins looked like. And we've talked about how the team was constructed and how they're, at least in terms of Middlestat, playing with like Vinny Lettieri, playing with guys from Providence. So I'm really interested to see what those two guys prove at the beginning of this season, with kind of a clean slate, and in terms of Middlestat, probably playing with a true line of NHLers to start the season and see where things go. I do think that for Middlestat, he does have quite a bit to prove, because it's really important that that second line at least can produce a little bit to help the first line, help Pasternak, help Geekie. So guys on that second line, like Middlestat, are going to have to step up from last season in order to help out there in a top six role. So I think he'll be under a microscope a bit. That's why my mind first went to Casey Middlestat, but I do think Swayman is the biggest key who needs to play better this year, because at the end of the day, if Casey Middlestat isn't doing great, you have more options to replace him or move him around the lineup or even trade him than you do with Swayman. So you're more locked in to Swayman. Could you trade him before the trade deadline? I guess, but I think that deal is much more difficult to make than trying to, maneuver. Maybe move Matt Poitras into second line center. Maybe there's so many more things that you can do to maneuver the roster to fix Middlestat not producing than you can for Swayman. You have to get much more creative. It's going to have to be a bigger deal, bigger plan, more difficult to execute. So I do think Swayman is the number one answer, but Casey Middlestat to me would be two.
Yeah, Swayman's the clear-cut answer for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is there's a lot of people on this team who have something to prove coming off such a down year. Like, I mean, honestly, it's like you could go through the whole line. Like, even Morgan Geekie, like, got to prove last year wasn't a fluke. Pavel Zacha had a down year. Again, to your point about secondary scoring, Bridget. Young guys like Poitras, Minton, Lysell, especially, like, just by the nature of being a young player trying to crack the NHL full time, you have something to prove. Mason Lohrei, he's got to prove he can be better defensively. Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm coming back from injury. Like, maybe what they have to prove is more health related than anything, but like McAvoy wasn't having an especially great season even before the injury. So, like all over there's guys with something to prove, but yeah, I think we can settle on Swayman as our answer here.
And if you want to even try to find something for David Pasternak, like you can, there's the leadership void that he and Charlie McAvoy in particular, it's their team now, right? So I'm not saying that I have any doubts in those two players from a leadership perspective, but I'm just saying that is something. It's their first full year without any of Bergeron, Marchand, Chara to be there with them. So it's their team going forward officially, and that's just something that they have to prove. But it's nothing that's like, it's not a critical eye I'm coming at this way.
No, I mean, everybody has something to prove, right? Like if you don't think you have anything to prove, then you're probably not suited for the NHL, because if you're, you list any of the guys on this roster, like Korpisalo wants to prove that he's more than just a backup, or he could be an even rotation, or he could be a starter. Like every one of these guys has stuff that they need to improve. So those are the things that they could prove to you in this upcoming season. And I do think Lohrei is one that has quite a bit to prove defensively next season too. And Poitras, like when you look at how he responded to being sent down to Providence a few times coming back up, like that was not a fun experience for him. I mean, he probably developed there in a way that he maybe couldn't have in Boston, but I think it was not an experience he really enjoyed, and he doesn't want to do it again. He wants to prove he's past that and doesn't need to go back to Providence. So, there's every single person on the team has something to prove realistically, whether it's leadership, whether it's doing better in certain areas, whether it's, I belong here, whatever. So we're going to go with Swayman though for the number one answer.
Yeah. So next one, most likely to have a career year. Obviously, the winner for this award last year would have been Morgan Geekie, who did break out with a career year. I'm curious what you guys came up with for this one, because I kept going like all over the roster, and I'm like, I don't know if there's anyone where I actually look at them and I'm like, oh, I think that guy's going to have a career year. But we got to pick something. So I'm interested, like, what you guys came up with as options here.
Well, It is tricky, Scott, and especially when some of the candidates in my mind don't even have a full NHL season to their name. So is a career year just one of one? Like, is anything a career year for Matt Poitras if he plays 82 games and gets more than 20 points? But I think my answer, most likely to have a career year, I'm probably going to have a repeat performance with Morgan Geekie. I think he's more likely to eclipse last year by a point and technically have a career year than anything else really I can think of.
Yeah, it also like depends on what the bar was already, right? Like we know, like it'd be difficult for David Pastrnak to have a career year because he's already had so many good ones. Could it happen? Yes. Bar is much higher. For me, I don't know if this is like me trying to find the easy way out, but I kept coming back to the young guys because it would be the barrier to have a career year for them is really low, right? Like so, like Fraser Minton hasn't played
but
an NHL game.
But I guess like maybe it's worth defining career year, because when I think of career year, I think like that's going to be the best season they have in their career.
Oh, the best.
And like I would hope like for a young guy that's not going to be the case.
Well, then that automatically takes out all the young guys because this isn't going to be their best.
It takes out a good chunk of them. It takes out a good chunk of them, which is why it's like in my mind, it's like, okay, is Elias Lindholm going to eclipse 82 points like he had back in 21-22? I don't. Maybe. But if the answer is most likely to have a career year, he's not my answer, right? Same with David Pastrnak. Like, yeah, what's his current season high in points for Pastrnak? Is it 110? A couple years ago?
That sounds right. Yeah, it was like, yeah, it was right around 110.
So his inability to do that next year for me isn't indicative of him as a player.
113 was his career high.
What's his last 3 years, Scott? I imagine you have it up right now. Is it 113, 110, 104?
113, 110, 106.
Okay. So if he doesn't eclipse 113 next year, or I don't project that, it's not because I don't think he can do it as a player. It's because of the cast around him, right? So I just come back to Pavel Zacha. Can he eclipse 60 points? I think might be his career high, or 59. Sure, but like I said, I think I might, because of the uncertainty of that second line's chemistry. I just picture Geekie eclipsing his career total, or his season, his career season high next year than anybody else. Even if it's by a point, that counts, right?
Yeah, and that makes the most sense as well. I mean, that's what Don Sweeney is predicting will happen, is that his best career year is still ahead of him when signing him to this contract. We talked about his contract being pretty fair earlier, but it also is, it's a significant raise from his last contract. This is the biggest contract he's gotten in his career, and it's given to him with the expectation that he is going to continue to get better. He's in his prime. He has shown progress since he came to the Bruins, so the trajectory would be that he is heading in the upward direction. So I do think that makes sense.
Yeah, and also like with Geekie, let's remember how bad his first 2 months were. Like if he's anything close to what he was from December on for a whole season, then like he is going to eclipse last year's numbers. Now the counter argument would be his shooting percentage last season probably not sustainable, so you're probably going to get a dip there that'll cut into the production a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it could be Geekie again. A couple I would throw out here. Is it possible that Casey Middlestat produces enough and the power play clicks and he's on the top unit, and all of a sudden he, racks up some points, and like Zacha is in the 60 neighborhood. His career high is 59. So like, I don't think he's going to get there, but that might not be that crazy if things break right. And then kind of smaller scale, but like, could one of Henry Jokiharju or Andrew Peeke play top 4 minutes and be pretty good and have the best season of their career? Like, I think that, again, like the ceiling isn't nearly as high. And those are two guys who have played 20 plus minutes before in different situations. But like, I could see that happening where you're like, huh, Yoki Haru actually looked like he might be a top 4 defenseman or peak, like whichever one kind of takes the lead in terms of which one of those guys gets more ice time and plays in kind of more situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these scenarios you bring up, Scudder, they're definitely possible. And I wouldn't discount any of them happening. But again, you mentioned Geeky's slow start last year, and while yes, a lower shooting percentage could help offset that, I also anticipate the Bruins power play being better. So like, can he get some more scoring on special teams? So I most likely to have a career year, I'm going to stick with Geeky. But I don't. That's not me saying that Zaka, Middlestat, Yoki Haru, Peak, whomever can't have one as well. But I think he's the highest candidate in my mind still.
Yeah, and it makes sense too because he and Pasternak already have the chemistry. That is a line that worked well at the end of the year together with when Lindholm was on it too. And then you look at, well, is it going to be Zaka? Is it going to be Middlestat? They are going to be playing with each other and having to build chemistry. And there's no guarantee they're going to have the right dynamic for that to work. Like, is Zaka going to shoot more? Is Middlestat going to shoot more? Who's going to be the go-to guy? Because the thing is, Zaka has had his best career years in Boston since coming to the Bruins. But last year was a down year for him. He was, I think his career high is 57, 58, something like that with Boston. And it's 59. And last year he only had 47. So he took a step back. And that's when you're not playing with Pasternak very much. I'm not going to bet on him to surpass that number that he got when he was playing with Pasternak. So
that's exactly where I was going to go with it too, Bridget. Is you hit it right in the head. Like, Zaka's had his best hockey in Boston, and for the last couple of years, for the last 3 years, minus the last 10 games of last season, he's been with Pasternak. The first year was with Pasternak and Krejci. The year prior was with Pasternak, and I don't even know who it would have been honestly that year. in the Centennial season, was it Heinen, Van Riemsdyk, a combination of those two. And then obviously last year, and then on the flip side, Geeky's performances, when you look at how he had a strong second half of the 23-24 season, entering the playoffs, in the playoffs with Pasternak on his line, and then last year, when we talk about the first few months he was struggling, he wasn't on a line with Pasternak. Now Pasternak had his own struggles to start last year too, but this next season should theoretically be the first time he's been with Pasternak from start to finish in a season if things go well.
Can I throw out another? I'm going to throw out another one here. With a question, how would you guys describe Nikita Zadorov's season last year? Like, good, fine, bad? Like, where did you kind of end up on his season?
Over scrutinized is how I would call it. I think he was fine. I think he was fine. He was fine plus.
Just statistically, did you know that he played the most minutes he's ever played in his career, tied his career high in points, and had the best plus minus of his career? Like, by definition, if Zadorov is better than last season, he had a career year this year.
Did he also have the highest penalty minutes of his career?
I don't believe so.
I mean, he was on track for it.
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah, he did. He ended up beating it.
I figured he had to be up there.
Don't get me wrong. Zadorov had some. He had his fair share of moments last year for the Bruins, but I can't help but feel like people just looked at the contract he signed and just from day one were like, nope. And for some reason, he became the poster child for last year's shortcomings from start to finish. And I just feel like he was, of all people to cast blame to, man, I don't know why he was chief among them at times. I mean, he's not Bobby Orr.
Yeah. I think it's because of how he started with all the penalties. And I feel like for fans who may have kind of gradually and media, like specifically thinking of sports radio, I think for people who kind of gradually tuned out as the year went on, they didn't pay attention. They didn't notice or care about the fact that he actually had a pretty good second half and stepped up in a bigger role, because it just like it never washed away all those penalties they saw at the start of the season, which I actually kind of get, but like, yeah, as people who paid closer attention, like we should highlight that the second half he was pretty solid, all things considered. I guess like my only counter argument to myself here is that ideally with Hampus Lindholm back, he's not playing as many minutes this year.
Yeah.
So
he should be in a more appropriate slot next year.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And I think that I do think at times last year he was trying to do too much. I think he was trying to prove too much, right? To the question we answered earlier, the superlative earlier. I think he was trying to prove too much. And I think once he just kind of settled in, even though the ship around him was still sinking, I do think he, in an elevated role still, I think he settled in. But I think that, yeah, being in a more natural spot in the blue line in a second year, more comfortability, I do expect him to be less of a headline for people next year as far as wrongdoings in Boston. Again, a lot of the people to be blamed for what happened last year. I mean, Swayman's one of them, but I mean, look at some of the guys that were traded away at the deadline. I mean, Coyle, Frederick, offensively were anemic. Carlo didn't have a great year. Like a lot of people contributed to what happened last year. But yes, Scott, you're right. Technically, it's not a Zadorov could be a candidate for a breakout season next year based off of last year's if he beats last year's numbers.
Can I also ask you a question, Scott? I think the answer is no. Has he ever worn an A at previous stops?
I don't think so.
Okay, I don't think so either, but I think he's trending towards kind of more of a leadership role, and at least like, you know, maybe with Marchand being gone, if one of the other guys, if you know, McAvoy or Pasta gets a C, maybe Zadorov gets an A at some point. Maybe not even this year, maybe some point even further in the future. But I think that he seems to be trending that way in terms of wanting a leadership role and you know, learning how to be one of the next leaders, which we can get to later because that's a much different question.
But it's a good one. I am curious real quick, because let's say that they do 3 A's next year and no captain, and you guys were choosing the third assistant captain. We all know who the first two would be. You're not in the room obviously, so you can't get a full sense, but what's your gut instinct, or what's the first person to come to your mind for that third A?
I think it's Hampus Lindholm.
Yeah,
I think he's really respected in that room. He's in a lot of those leadership meetings. I think he is quietly vocal. I think he's definitely a good leader by example. I think he probably slides in most seamlessly. If I had to guess, I would also mention Sean Corrali, who has wore a letter in Columbus, and is certainly being brought back for leadership as part of the reason he was signed. But I don't know that he necessarily needs a letter to fill that role.
Hampus was also the first person that comes to my mind, but also I want to acknowledge that if they didn't trade away Coyle and Carlo, I would have put those guys ahead of both Hampus Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov in terms of leaders and who could be the ones wearing the A, which at times in the past they have as well, depending on different injuries and different situations. Like there'll be a one-off game here or there that you'd see one of those guys wearing a letter already, but they are obviously not on the team anymore. So you go to, you know, this next round of who can be on that leadership pipeline.
Speaking of leadership, you're already starting to see it right now. And we haven't really talked about it.
Do we want to, because we have this as a superlative, so we might as well just do it now. But kind of talking about leadership levels, one of these is most likely to emerge as a leader. So to me, I guess in my mind, that's not Pasternak or McAvoy, who are already wearing letters. And I don't even know if it's necessarily like Hampus Lindholm. I guess he could be a candidate based on what we were just talking about. But I don't know if you guys had any ideas for someone who kind of fits this, but I was thinking Morgan Geekie on a new contract, someone who I think started to find his voice a little more last year, and now is clearly part of this core moving forward. I don't think he's not gonna wear a letter this year, and I don't think he'd even be like in the next 1 or 2 guys up if someone's injured. But I could see him becoming someone who has a little bit more of a voice on this team and becomes part of kind of that smaller like leadership group, we'll call it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think Elias Lindholm was another one that comes to my mind. I think, again, we talked about Zadorov enough, so he's obviously part of that conversation. But I think having a second year under their belt in Boston, I think for Lindholm and Zadorov both, I do think that they both have leadership qualities in their own ways. And again, it's one of our answers above. When it comes to worst signing, that's more to do with contract. But I could see Tanner Jeannot being a leadership guy as well, and he's a new guy to the locker room. And I don't know if he's won a letter in the past, but by many accounts that have talked since this signing, he is a very well liked guy in his previous dressing rooms and does set that tone off the ice, whether it's physical testing or just being a good teammate. So I think he's somebody else like a Sean Corrali that could be one of those bottom 6 leaders and just new voices in the room.
Yeah, I mean, my thought, this was also one of the things that I proposed as a superlative. When I was thinking of it, I was also thinking of the captain, right? Who's going to be the captain. So to me, it's not off limits to have the, McAvoy or Pastrnak be the answer to the question of who is going to emerge as a leader, because we've seen them fill it in the absence of Marchand, right? Like we've seen it in the last few months because Marchand left, and then these guys are the guys answering to the media. They're the guys answering to the team in the locker room. They're starting to do it, but they're still fairly early on in what they could be as a leader, right? Because they haven't taken over, neither of them taken over the full role as a captain. So to me, one of the two of them is going to have to really step up into that role. I personally think David Pastrnak is somebody that I've seen a lot of growth from in terms of leading and speaking, and even if it's not natural for him because he's more of the like, I'm going to be funny and sit over here and make jokes and wear funny hats or whatever. You see him mature, and you see him be somebody who at the very least is a great leader by example and how he shows up and performs, and he's very well liked as well. So I would put him in that. If he does get the C, he could, I believe that he would be a good captain and would emerge as the next top of the the food chain leader of the team.
So that's a great way to look at this question, Bridget. To that point, I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I can make the argument that we've now seen David Pastrnak emerge as that leader, whether or not at least him being the captain or that he has more to emerge to, sure. But I saw a lot out of him last year. My answer to this is his counterpart in Charlie McAvoy. I want to see Charlie McAvoy emerge as that next level of leadership, because you hear a lot about it over 4 nations. A lot of the best players from around the league were talking about how he's a leader in every room he steps into. And I have no doubts that McAvoy's been a leader this whole time. But again, the element of no more Marchand, no more Char, no more Bergeron, no more Krejci. I want to see McAvoy emerge the way we saw Pastrnak emerge post-deadline last year, where he really just kind of took major accountability. And so I've kind of seen it from Pastrnak, and I want to see it from McAvoy. He hasn't really had the chance because he was out. So for that reason, I mean, my answer is Charlie McAvoy.
Yeah, all good. Do we want? So now I'm thinking so we could go with McAvoy as the answer if we keep this as most likely to emerge as leader, or do we change it on the fly here and just say most likely to be captain, a la like the high school superlative, like most likely to be president type of thing, which I definitely did not win. So
I'm gonna vote Brian for that. I know I'm gonna vote Harold.
I think that's fine, Scott. I think if I'm giving that answer, I feel like McAvoy is who the Bruins might want to be that guy. I can't put a finger on it. I just feel like maybe I'm thinking about what Andy Brickley said
Yeah,
over
I
the
still
offseason.
I still think it's Pasta. That's
It
where my
might
gut
be.
is.
It might be, but I think they're hoping it's Charlie. I'm not saying that it won't be David. I'm just saying, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right, Brian. Like there definitely seems to be that undertone of like, I mean, we kind of heard it all along. Like it was like McAvoy at a young age was kind of pegged as like future captain material, and like you didn't really hear that as much about Pasternak when he was a younger player, and then all of a sudden this past season, unfortunately for McAvoy, kind of through circumstances he couldn't control, like he just wasn't around as much because of the injury. And I think I would side with Bridget and say, like, if we're gonna do most likely to be captain, I probably lean Pasternak right now.
Yeah, I mean, he deserves it. I think he's been your best player even when the team was playing horribly. He wasn't, and he's so well liked, and also he's going to go down as one of the best players in your franchise. And you have a chance to give him a C, and you pass him up because right, they're not going to McAvoy and then going backwards. Like you would be skipping him, really. I think if you went just age wise, and experience wise, and how many years he's been with the team. I just think he deserves it, and I think he would be good at it. Honestly, I think he has matured and calmed, and I just think he's the right person.
Unless
I don't know.
Unless he doesn't really want it. And you could, and I can also see the argument where, man, the guy who doesn't want the captaincy, that's the guy that should be the captain because he's just
You gotta give it to
him. I can get behind that really, but I could also see behind closed doors just conversations being had where, you know what, David really doesn't want that responsibility and he doesn't need that letter to elevate his game on a nightly basis. Whereas maybe Charlie, maybe he would take a certain element of pride in that role and it would force him to elevate his game as much as he can always because he has to lead by example. I can, all I'm saying is I could see it being a political thing where maybe certain players challenge themselves more so in that role. I don't know. I'm just, we can give the answer to be Pasternak. I have no arguments against it. I'm just trying to because I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. But I'm talking about maybe there's things we don't know about, and maybe that's why. Because I can't ignore this element of the Bruins. They seem to want it to be McAvoy, and I'm not. It's not because they don't like David as the captain, but it could be that they know more than we do. And anyway, but we can give the answer to Pasternak.
I guess the good news is that you have two people that you feel comfortable giving it to either of them. So
Definitely.
that you at least have going for you. And I don't think anybody would be disagreeing if it was one or the other. But I do think it's Pasta's turn.
Bridget, you gotta remember sports radio when you say things like that. You better believe as soon as they name a captain, there are people who are gonna pit these two against each other and try to make this a thing.
No, either one of them. Either one of them would be a great captain. I really do think that to this point, if we're talking on merit, it's Pasternak. It absolutely is to this point.
All
so
right.
that could be our answer.
Then most likely to be captain David Pasternak. Okay.
Yeah. And most likely to have a career year, we settled on Morgan Geekie. I think that's the pick there. All right, we can try to pick up the pace a little bit here. Most likely to break out, to have a breakout season. So this is where I think we can talk about some of the younger guys, maybe. Because my mind went to Matt Poitras, who in a way kind of had, 2 years ago, had a little bit of a breakout moment where he sticks around and gets off to that really strong start. But obviously, then he gets hurt, spends most of last season in Providence. Like, I think I really could see him sticking this year and having an actual breakout season that lasts more than the first month or two. So that was where my mind went.
Do we want to relabel this as most likely to win the Nesson 7th Player Award? That's more or less what it is. In that case, I'm not going to disagree with Scott here. Although this is a great opportunity for me to slide in a koozie shout out.
Like honestly, like that, he is definitely worth bringing up because I could see him like running with a third line job and putting up some points. Like, you know, I mean, if I had to bet, like, who has a better season, Patra or Husnudinov, like, I would maybe go lean towards Patra, but like it's close. Like, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Husnudinov's the one that we're talking about who ends up with, I don't know, even just call it like 35, 40 points, like something like that. Like, that feels like it could happen.
My guy.
Yeah. I also was thinking, to me, it was, and this depends on just how the bottom six ends up shaking out. We had this conversation when they signed all of those bottom six free agents, like who's the odd man out, who cracks the lineup, who forces their way in. And to me, that, is in and of itself going to take having a pretty good breakout season for one of the younger guys to take over a role, because it's just such a logjam there now with the new additions in free agency. And I think maybe somebody like Fraser Minten might have to really have a breakout year to force his way into the lineup on a regular basis. And very similarly to the situation Matt Patra is in, with Patra having a little bit more NHL experience. But I could see Fraser Minten starting to really this being the season that he really gets a majority of the season as an NHLer rather than playing a majority of the season as an AHLer. And he would have to, like I said, beat out guys like Corrali or Isamont for playing time, Beecher, and even Husnudinov would kind of be his competition as well. So he would have to beat out those guys, but maybe he can do it. I though do want to say I agree with Scott that I think if we want to really term it like breakout, like having a noteworthy season that would get you the 7th Player Award, it would take more than just performances that are good enough to keep you in the lineup over other people, which I do feel like Patra could take a second line role and run with it potentially if somebody else isn't. So I think he has a higher potential, I think, to do that and to put up points.
And that's the other side to that 7th Player Award is I think it's voted about exceeding expectations. And I do think fans do have expectations for Patra. So it's almost like if he has like a 40-point season, I feel like he's kind of meeting people's expectations. So it's kind of
I don't know. He's also so well liked that I think people would just vote for him.
Oh, yeah, no.
And why I think they're like, give it to him. We like him.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. I think he's the answer here. We can give him the answer.
Yeah. All right. Let's go with Patra and move on to most exciting prospect. I think this one's pretty straightforward. James Hagens.
Yeah, James Hagens. Jimmy Hags. We can move on from this one. We talked about it enough.
Yes. Most likely to be traded away. So, you could take this any way you want. Like, this could be before the season, it could be in season. A couple candidates to highlight. One, and maybe this ends up being the answer because it's the one that I could actually see before the season, but Jonas Korpisalo. I still think the Bruins entertain offers there if they get any. And then in season, you look at, the pending unrestricted free agents, Victor Arvidsson and Andrew Peeke on that list as guys who are not signed beyond the season. So I don't know if you guys have a lean. I almost kind of feel like I have to go with Korpisalo because that one could still happen before the season even starts.
I'm not going to dispute that one, Scott. I do think the Arvidsson one's real too, because I could see them doing that soft sell at the deadline. And I do think Arvidsson would be a desirable piece for a playoff team. Same with Peeke, right? I guess, but if I had to choose one, maybe just, I don't know, maybe Arvidsson, but Yeah, Korpisalo is a good one. I think that's a good one. I again, Middlestat and Zaka, like there's been a lot of smoke around their names, but I just have a hard time seeing them getting traded before the season, especially because I just don't think the trade market's probably great right now, and I don't think the Bruins are in a position to keep trading away the very few top 6 candidates that they have. So I'll go with Korpisalo.
Yeah, I think they're in a tough spot which we've gone over this offseason before, where even if you wanted to trade away Zaka, he's your second line guy. To get another second line guy, you now have to solve a different hole, a different problem, which makes the easiest person in your forward group to trade Arvidsson because of the expiring contract. I'll agree with you guys, I guess, for Korpisalo, just because I think DiPietro could also come in and be a good backup. So I think that there's a solution that is in the system to, if you did want to move him and see what you can get for him, or maybe even just open up cap space. You do have somebody that I think you could bring in as an adequate backup, though notably, like, he hasn't done that in the NHL before. Blair Korpisalo has, and they did opt to not go that route before, which, because we had this conversation when they traded Marc and got Korpisalo back, like, well, clearly they didn't just want to go with someone in the system. They wanted to have an NHL experience goalie. So I'll just throw that in there to be devil's advocate to myself as well, because maybe that's not what Sweeney wants is an AHL backup. So
yeah, I mean, and again, like, it is worth noting that DiPietro needs to clear waivers to be sent to Providence, and given that we heard reports of other teams having interest in him, it's very fair to wonder if he would clear waivers. Like, he might get claimed and then you lose him for nothing. You know, they could also, in theory, keep all 3 goalies on the NHL roster. They obviously are not up against the cap, so, you know, you would go 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, 3 goalies. But how are you getting all 3 of them ice time? Like, if Swayman does bounce back, he's playing probably just as much as he played last year. Korpisalo already felt like he didn't play enough last year. And now you're going to add in a third goalie that, you know, is still at a point in his career where, like, you can't just have him sit on the bench and never play. So that, like, technically is an option, but I just don't really see how they can make it work.
All right, we have 2 quick ones here. Or could be quick. This should be quick. We only have so much time.
All right, most likely big name target, and that could be trade or project ahead to free agency next year, because I know people like looking at that list of players who could be free agents next summer. I've said before, I think a lot of them are going to get re-signed, and you're going to get to July 1 next year and be disappointed by who's left. But, you know, some of these are names that we've touched on before. Martin Necas is still one you see on trade boards. Jordan Kyrou is one whose name continues to pop up in rumors. I really like Alex Tuch in Buffalo as someone who would be an unrestricted free agent after this coming season. There's kind of been a couple. There were some reports early this offseason that he and Buffalo had mutual interest in an extension, and then, you know, hasn't happened yet, but doesn't mean it won't. One name I kind of take note of, Rasmus Andersson, right-handed defenseman, Calgary. It seems like a foregone conclusion he's going to get traded at some point, whether it's now or before the deadline, but sounds like he is yet another Calgary player who has very little interest in extending with them. So, you know, we know the Bruins could use help on the right side, especially if, say, they don't plan on re-signing Andrew Peeke going forward. So that's another name that I kind of would throw out there.
I got one more name for you guys, and I'm not sure the likelihood, but it's a name I've seen out there as well, which is Mason McTavish. Now, what would he be in Boston, right? You just drafted James Hagens to be a top 6 center of the future, hopefully number 1 center. McTavish to this point isn't really a number one center, so he would kind of just be another guy that's capable of being a second line center like a Lindholm or a Zaka or a Middlestat. So a little bit of redundancy there, but at the same time, he's 22 years old and has scored at a clip that is very impressive for his age and tenure in the league. And I don't know why the Ducks would want to move on from him. I think at the very least, he could be one of the top third line centers in all of hockey. They obviously have Leo Carlson right now. He's their number one center of the future. They just traded away Trevor Zegras. So I don't know why they would rid of McTavish unless the player's just unhappy. And it's a situation that the team has to kind of deal with. But he's a name I've seen out there as well.
And didn't they just draft McQueen too? So
Yep, exactly. And is Beckett Seneke, is he a center or is he a winger?
I think he's a wing.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you my favorite, but also least realistic. All right. I know the question was most realistic. I'm going to go the other way. Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, who is he's going to be a free agent at the end of next season, has not signed an extension yet with Vegas, though they did just trade and then add Mitch Marner to their system, and I think with hopes that those two be playing together for a long time. I think it is unlikely because I think Vegas really, really, really wants to keep him and will try to do whatever they can to get him. And also, if he were to say, no, I'm going to free agency, there would be a lot of teams interested and the price would be very high. But I, as a player, think he would be the perfect fit. So if you really want to set your sights high, like you really hope that for somehow, some way he ends up going to free agency and he wants to come back home because he's a Massachusetts native and he wants to come to Boston and try to win a cup here. He already won one with Vegas. So least likely, but most appealing person that I think it comes to mind when I think of adding someone. I don't think it's highly realistic because of I think he'll sign an extension with Vegas, really.
Yeah. That's what I think is going to happen. I think, honestly, it probably happens before the season starts, but maybe it drags into the season because most important, Bridget, you're right. Like, obviously, Vegas wants to keep him. They envision him and Marner together for years to come. Even more important, I think he wants to stay in Vegas. I've said this all along. I think Jack Eichel is very happy there. I think he loves it there. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up signing the exact same deal that Marner just signed. 8 years, $12 million a year. Obviously, that's a lot of money tied up in two players, but cap is going up. That might not be, that won't be unmanageable. I think they'll be okay with those two contracts. So I strongly believe that's going to happen, which is why I can't really pick him, even though you're right. Like it would be great. It would be a great story. And I think, if he wasn't going to stay in Vegas for whatever reason, things just fall through. I do think Boston would be at or near the top of his list of where he'd want to be. But I just don't see it happening.
That is your centers. Like, look at the turnaround for centers. Then you have Eichel as your top line center, and then you have Hagens coming in. Maybe he's 2C, and then you have Elias Lindholm 3C, and then the center depth would look insane at that point. But that's why we're mostly just dreaming here. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be a dream.
As far as some of the realistic choices, as Bridget put it, though, so like. I bring up Mason McTavish, and he's an RFA right now. Martin Necas he's a UFA at the end of next season. What would the Bruins have to part with, do you think, to acquire one of these players? And would you be willing to do it for that price? So, for example, like McTavish, right? What would it cost to get him? Would it cost a first round pick, maybe? And again, if it was not so. Would he be an offer sheet or a trade? I don't know. It gets murky, but like, let's just say the cost is like one of the first round picks that the Bruins acquired from Florida or Toronto, one of their first round picks. That's not a Boston pick. And then maybe they send a player like Matt Patra to receive like a Mason McTavish or a Martin Necas. And I'm just kind of spitballing, but is that what do you think the cost would be, and what would you be willing to part with?
Yeah, I think it probably has to include at least one first round pick. Probably start there and then add whether it's prospect or another pick. You could still offer sheet him as of now. He's a restricted free agent who hasn't signed, or trade. If the Ducks are open to that, but yeah, I mean, either one of those guys. If you're making a trade, McTavish or Nachos, like it's gonna cost a lot, and obviously Nachos really only makes sense if you have an extension in place. The Bruins are not going to be in the business of trading for a rental or someone that there's any risk they would lose after the season. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys, are leaning any way on an answer. I keep coming back to Nachos, like, just as, like, I don't have any intel on, like, hey, the Bruins are going to make a run at him, but I know that they were interested before when things are kind of, seem to be falling apart in Carolina. He's a dynamic offensive player, one of the fastest skaters in the league. Like, whether it's in a trade because the Avalanche decide, like, hey, he's not re-signing here, we're going to move him, or if he does get to free agency and the Bruins are in a position to pursue him, like, I do think it's possible at some point that we hear about them showing interest in Nachos.
Yeah,
I think we can put him, because he's been tied to rumors involving the Bruins before. He's from the Czech Republic. He's going to be going over in February to play with David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha, and we know that the Bruins have been a landing spot for Czech players because of David Pastrnak. So, I mean, there's certainly some things that would make him maybe consider signing an extension here in Boston, and reasons why you could see he might be happy here. He'll be on the East Coast. He'll be close, which is closer to Europe. The time changes and is crazy. He's got Czech teammates. I see that as a target that makes sense for both sides, I guess, in a way. So I would say that's most likely, though. We do not know.
But unless you're afraid someone's gonna trade for him in the meantime, I don't see why, if you're Boston, you want to just wait until he hits free agency and you're all the cost is his money as opposed to any assets. But again, you're running the risk of him going somewhere else and signing. So that's, maybe Sweeney has a better feel for that stuff than we do. Hopefully, you would think. All right, so yeah, Natchez can be the answer there for sure. I think we have one more maybe to get to.
Most likely to win an award. Could be any award. But obviously, like, you look at the Bruins and you're like, listen, I infamously had a bold prediction that Jeremy Swayman was going to win the Vezina last year.
Oof. Didn't
quite work out. Swing and a miss. I didn't even come close to making contact on that one. It was way out in front of it. I'm not going to pick Swayman again, so I'm not going to say that one. But I wonder, like, David Pastrnak, MVP, like, does he just go absolutely bananas this year? And this is his Hart Trophy season? Like, again, it's a stretch. Like, he wouldn't be my, all things equal, he wouldn't be my pick to win the Hart Trophy. But, does anyone step up and win the Calder? Norris doesn't really feel like anyone's going to be in contention for that.
I think Pastrnak winning the Rocket Richard is the most likely scenario.
That's a good one.
Can I add one? Marco Sturm.
I had that on my list. Yeah, if they overperform. Yeah.
I mean, Jim Montgomery had that happen not that long ago. Now, did his team include Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci and Taylor Hall and all of these other good players that led their way and forced their way to the best regular season finish in NHL history? Like, that's gonna really increase your odds of getting it. I think that is absolutely not what kind of team Marco Sturm is stepping into. But if the team makes a big job, like if this team makes the playoffs, if the team is in playoff position, it looks like they're outperforming what people thought they could do. I could see him being a Jack Adams candidate, a finalist for that. if in his first season they go from finishing 5th from last to making the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a good one because the Jack Adams it does tend to be coach whose team overachieved the most, and usually it's closer to the top of the league, right? It's like someone who goes from middle of the pack to one of the best, right? Spencer Carberry with Washington this last year, they went from barely squeaking into the playoffs to best record in the East. Like usually it's more of that, but sometimes it is bad team to making playoffs. So like that would absolutely put Marco Sturm in play. If we wanted to cheat a little, this isn't really in the spirit of what I was thinking with the question, but I mean, James Hagens might win the Hobie Baker.
That is cheating.
Yeah.
It's not even the same league.
We'll keep it to NHL, but I honestly, guys, I think the two most likely scenarios for Bruins taking home hardware would be like David Pastrnak winning the Rocket Richard Trophy for most goals scored in the NHL, and then like maybe like Hampus Lindholm like winning like the Lady Bing for like most gentlemanly like player that can play. That's a
or Hampus Lindholm winning Lindholm or McAvoy winning the Masterton.
What's that for again?
Like perseverance. A lot of times it's guys who come back from injury. Sometimes it's other stuff. Like this year was Sean Monahan because of obviously he was best friends with Johnny Gaudreau. So everything he kind of dealt with and really was a leader of that Columbus team. The only problem with one of them winning the Masterton is if he stays healthy, it's almost certainly going to be Gabriel Landeskog to win the Masterton this year.
Oh, for sure.
Because he kind of came back too late to win it this past season.
Or Jonathan Taves.
Yeah. So like that's probably an uphill battle for those guys, honestly.
Yeah. I think I'm comfortable putting down.
I mean, there's a little bit of historic precedence for the coach, for the Jack Adams stuff though. Like if you look back, I was just looking through all the recent winners of it, and it's like, okay, well, all of the Bruins past coaches won it fairly early in taking over as head coach. Like Claude Julien won it in 2009, and we were just kind of talking about how that rebuild / retooling to actually go on a playoff run kind of maybe has some similarities to this one. So, maybe you could see something with that with Sturm.
Yeah, I just don't expect them to be good enough for that to happen. So yeah. I think my answer would be the one Brian threw out is Pastrnak winning the Rocket Richard because he's good enough to do that, and he can do it even if the team's bad.
I mean, Claude Julien in his first year with Boston did make the playoffs, and it was obviously the following year where he won the Jack Adams. So like even if the Bruins did make the playoffs this year, like Sturm's time to shine would probably be the following year. Yeah. Even Cassidy, like he had half a season before. When did Bruce win his? Was that
he won it in 2020? So it was after.
Yeah, he had a few years. Yeah,
it was after the the Stanley Cup final.
Yep. All right, so David's the answer there, guys. Just one last comment from me before we sign off here is, and I mentioned it, I started to mention it earlier, but you're already seeing some of the differences in leadership, I think, this summer. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think a lot of the Bruins players were doing captain's practices in Boston until closer to training camp, and I think that you see players that have been in Boston for a lot of this summer, and I think they've been on the ice having captain's practices. I know Pavel Zacha's. And I think Pasternak's around. So I just think that
McAvoy and Swayman were at the Coldplay concert last night, so I know they're around.
Yeah. I think Kevin Miller was on a Nesson podcast with Sylvia Yurskevich, and why am I blanking on the gentleman's name? But anyway, he talked about the importance of a training camp, and I think that the Bruins are really emphasizing their training camp this year and getting up to a good start. And I think you're seeing that with the players. I think they're already taking things seriously this summer.
But before we wrap up, actually, we can quickly, I guess, run through our superlatives, and maybe we'll throw up like a graphic of these. So we went best signing, Morgan Geekie. Worst signing, Tanner Jeannot. Most approved, Jeremy Swayman. Most likely to have a career year, also Morgan Geekie. Most likely to break out, Matt Patra. Most exciting prospect, James Hagens. Most likely to be traded away, Jonas Korpisalo. Most likely big name target, Martin Necas. Most likely to be captain, David Pastrnak. And most likely to win an award, also David Pastrnak, with the award being the Rocket Richard. Before we wrap up, I might be developing I don't know if this is a good or bad habit of teasing something for our next episode. If we hadn't run so long, I was going to get to this, but I want to spend a little more than just a minute on it. Brian, yesterday you tweeted out, Bruins fans, what's your all-time Bruins starting lineup? Are you selecting on pure talent, considering potential chemistry, fit, ? And then you put center, left wing, right wing, lefty, righty, goalie. As a card-carrying member of the Centennial Committee a few years ago, I do have some thoughts on this, and I wanna get into this next week.
Yeah, it's a question that seems obvious, certainly on the blue line, right? But even then, it's just like I said. That's why I know if you're going off talent, like it's Bork and Orr, but it's like, okay, but do you want to complement Bobby Orr's up and down nature with a more stay-at-home Chara, and then it's like you want Bork, Chara, and Orr all left shot defensemen. So yeah, we can definitely get into that. And before we sign off, just clarifying, so nobody wants to rethink the most exciting prospect and sub in Letourneau over Hagens. Are we confident in Hagens as that answer? Okay, all right. Just wanted to
I mean, there are a lot of names to go through, but yeah, no.
Okay,
I think we'll probably keep Hagens there.
All right, sounds good to me.
We always have time to change our mind when Dean has he's leading BC in goals halfway through the year, but
that's true.
Can I say one thing too before we sign off? Because
Bridget, you were part of this, like renaming it the Dean Pot.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be like Hodine Baker? Like, does that work? Do we have to workshop that?
Hodine what?
Instead of Hobie Baker, it's Hodine Baker.
The Hodine Dean.
Hodine
Baker.
Okay, I had no idea what he was saying.
For the top player in college hockey.
Yeah. He is the tallest. I mean, not actually the tallest, but he's very close.
You can't hear it, but in the background, Harold's going boo.
But I just wanted to say before we go that we thank our listener Skip, who is sending us some chocolates from Switzerland, but I also wanted to thank Abigail, who I got a video from this week, and she said, "Hi Bridget, hi guys, the chocolates are on their way." And I'm like, yeah, that's right, I get mentioned by name, so I'm her favorite. Thank you, Abigail, for sending the chocolate over. A nice young Bruins fan who likes to listen to our podcast too. So
I mean, Skip and Abigail have to be at the top of the listener power rankings right now. Like, I don't know of any other listeners sending us Swiss chocolate. So,
exactly.
But bar's been set, guys.
Bar has been set. And I think I made a joke because one time Ben Charleston, who doesn't work there anymore, but he used to be a Red Sox producer, somebody made homemade wine and sent it to him in like these like weird unmarked bottles. I was like, Ben, you can't drink that. Like, please don't drink. He did. But yeah, no, I mean, some gifts are a little bit, crazy, but the chocolate is perfect. So thank you.
We just have to make sure we're there to pick it up when it arrives, because people who maybe don't know like radio station culture, full of vultures. Like any food that's around disappears very quickly. So yes, we gotta be on our toes here.
And also the heat it's been like almost 100 degrees here the last few days. So
well, thank you very much to Skip and Abigail for listening. Thanks to everybody else for listening as well. And have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.